What's up, y'all? This is episode 126 of Shoebooty Sports coming at you Tuesday night. I'm your host, Graham Powell. I'm going solo tonight. My co host and best friend, Brad Brown, is taking the night off. He should be back next week, but he's going to take the week off, and it's going to just be me tonight. So bear with me for some juice and water breaks in between. I don't have my usual coffee, decaf coffee. It's 10:05 p.m. right now. I got started a little later than usual because I didn't have to necessarily start exactly right on time because, yeah, it's just me. So I could set my own schedule tonight. So bear with me. This will be out tonight, though. And I'm sure most of you will be listening to it in the morning and beyond anyway. So I appreciate your patience. Okay, so as usual, we're going to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, the reason that this show exists, Rhino Races. Rhino Races is a virtual race series that offers 5 different races: a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, a marathon, and the Rhino Ultra. You can sign up for one or all 5 of their races at rhinoraces.com. Run your race at your convenience, track it with your fitness app of choice, screenshot your results as proof of completion. Submit that screenshot to rhinoraces.com under the submit results section. Once your results are verified by Rhino Races staff, your award will be shipped to you by mail. Also, check out their gear section for t-shirts, wristbands, decals, and more. That's rhinoraces.com. Rhino Races is the premier virtual running series. And also, you can find us, Shoebooty Sports, on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a like and follow while you're there. And follow us on X at Shoebooty Sports. Okay, so we had some Elite Eight matchups, men's and women's tournament over the weekend, and we now have the Final Four set for the men's and women's brackets. On the men's side, you have UConn and Alabama. Alabama, the 4 seed, will play UConn, and I believe that's Alabama's first tournament or Final Four appearance in since I don't know, I don't remember, but it's been a while. Okay, we'll put it that way. You got UConn, Alabama, of course, UConn, the defending champs, and NC State and Purdue. This is Purdue's first Final Four appearance since 1980. So, considering they've been a 1 seed throughout the 90s and beyond that, I don't think I've been far off in saying what I've said about them in the past, that they are the most overrated collegiate program in men's college basketball or in men's basketball. But Purdue has looked really good this tournament, got to the Final Four, so congrats to them. They legitimately look like the second best team in the nation to me right now. Zach Edey put on a show against Tennessee, had 40 points, close to 20 rebounds, so huge game from him. And they will be taking on NC State, this is their first Final Four appearance since 1983 when they won it all. That was the Jimmy V team, upsetting the heavily favored Houston Cougar squad. Phi Slamma Jamma. It's been a while since I've had to say that. So, Drexler, Elijah, that crew, still crazy that they lost. But I mean, that's the beauty of March Madness. Anything can happen in a tournament, one game or single elimination tournament setting. This is the matchup we have. NC State, they were the ACC tournament champions, knocked off Duke in the Elite Eight to get there, fellow ACC rival. But yeah, NC State, an 11 seed, will take on 1 seed Purdue and 4 seed Alabama against top overall seed UConn. These are both Saturday games, by the way, on TBS. As of now, Purdue and NC State will tip off at 5:09 p.m. That's Central Time, I believe. And the following game will be Alabama and UConn at 7:49 p.m. I will be at the Arkansas Travelers opening weekend, Saturday night. I believe that'll be their second game, but it's opening weekend for the Travelers and minor league baseball. And I will be there with my running club, the Cabot Cruisers. So I will catch up. I will keep score or keep track of the score of the Purdue NC State game, but I'll be able to catch at least the second half, I would think, of the excuse me, Alabama Purdue game. So, two very interesting matchups to look forward to on the men's side and the women's side. Of course, storyline stuff. I'm trying to think. I was trying to think of the exact words that I want to describe it. Uh, Box office type of matchups. You got Paige Beckers in Yukon against Caitlin Clark in Iowa. Two Wooden Awards finalists there. Two of the best players in the country on the women's side of things, and on the other side, you got the defending national champs, South Carolina, or excuse me, not the defending national champions. That the defending national champions were ousted by Iowa and Caitlin Clark last night, Monday night, and I will discuss that here in a bit. But on the other side of the bracket, you've got undefeated South Carolina, top overall seed, taking on North Carolina State on the women's side. But North Carolina State is a premier women's college basketball program. They've been in that that 1 to 3 seed throughout, like in the last several years. They've been in that 1, 2, 3 seed spot in the tournament. So no surprise that they are there, but it's pretty cool to have two schools that both the men and women are in the Final Four of the college basketball NCAA tournament. And yeah, UConn, NC State, pretty wild stuff. Has to be very cool to be a student there right now, or just a fan of the two schools in general, or of either school. Pretty neat stuff. Doesn't happen often, so not only one doing it, two doing it. So interesting year for college basketball, men's and women's side, but that's just adding to the reasons for it. But let's talk a little. I'll talk a little bit about. Let's go ahead and just look at the matchups. I'd say Alabama. I think Alabama could. I mean, you never know. They could give UConn some problems, but I got UConn winning that one. UConn is the best team I've seen in years. Like last year's team was as good of a team as I've seen since the Kentucky team that won it all with Anthony Davis. Whenever that was, 2008, 2010, I don't know at this point. That was the easiest pick for my bracket, or that was the last easiest pick for my bracket, and because that there was just it was a dominant squad. UConn was that last year, but they did it as a 5 seed, I believe. But we knew they had lost some players to the NBA, but they still have a lot of those guys back and had some key players coming in. So I thought UConn was far and away the best team coming into the season. For whatever reason, they weren't ranked number one overall, but they're clearly the best team in the country. I think Purdue would give them the toughest matchup. So I see Purdue and UConn taking care of business in the Final Four Friday night, or excuse me, Saturday night. And that's the matchup I definitely want to see. UConn and Purdue. See what Danny Hurley can scheme up for against Zach Edey and company. It's not all Zach Edey. I mean, they got some playmakers on the perimeter, but Zach Edey is the guy. He's proven to be unstoppable throughout the tournament. Like I said, 40 points against Tennessee on whatever it was, Sunday, I believe. And yeah, Sunday afternoon. And yeah, he's proven to be unstoppable. A bit of a liability on defense, just as far as just being slow, getting up and down the floor, and just defending. I mean, if he stays there in front of the basket, he's a problem. But for opposing teams, but yeah, it's that was his biggest knock. He needs to work on his defense, footwork. Uh, if he's going to make it as an NBA player, but he's a hell of a college basketball player, and that's proven to be the case this postseason. That's the matchup I want to see. I still think UConn gets it done. I just think they're too good of a team. I think they are. I think UConn's up here, and then you've got that next tier of a UConn. Uh, I would even, or excuse me, you got UConn up here. That next tier below them, I think you could throw Purdue in there. I think you could throw pretty much all the other one seeds, North Carolina, etc. I would throw Tennessee in there. I mean, Tennessee played them very close. Purdue, that is, and was the regular season SEC champion. But I think you got those teams. They're really good teams, not great teams, but I think I mean, UConn is a great team, and I think UConn will take care of business on Monday night. Of course, Brad and I will be back next week to go over the national championship games, but this week, I got to make my picks and give you my analysis on what I think of both sides of things. But I got UConn taking care of business on the men's bracket, and I don't think it'll even be that close. I think Purdue could keep up with them for a half, but I think UConn will separate themselves early in the second, and then just kind of maintain that throughout because that's just what UConn does. UConn doesn't make things very interesting. They they were dominant in every game they played in the tournament last year. The national championship game was one of the most boring championship games I'd ever seen, just because it wasn't very competitive. San Diego State made the score kind of look closer than it really was, but it felt like a 8 to 11 point game the entire way in UConn's favor, and I don't even remember the final score, but I want to say it was around that. It just wasn't very interesting because UConn's just that much better than everybody else. So I got the Huskies on the men's side. On the women's side, much more interesting matchups. Much more interesting matchups. I mean, it was even that in the Elite Eight with Iowa and LSU national championship game rematch. I don't, you know, it seems like a game you'd like to see it in a championship game, but of course you'd have to go through South Carolina to get there, so we might not have gotten that. A lot of people griped about LSU being a 3 seed. I did not, just because, I mean, they lost whatever it was, 5, I believe 5 games in the regular season. And yeah, so it I mean, they could have been a 2. You could have made them a 2 seed, but yeah, I mean, the committee made sure to put them in the same bracket with Iowa just to see if we could get that matchup, and we did, and it did not disappoint. Uh Very hyped up game. I just saw they broke records, got 12 point something million viewers. So huge night for women's basketball last night, and a heck of a game on top of that. But the final score, though, really even it was kind of like UConn and San Diego State last year on the men's side in the national championship game, like I just discussed. The score made it look closer than I thought it really was. It was a tie ball game at the half, and it was really anybody's ball game. But in that third quarter, Caitlin Clark really came alive. She had a heck of a first half, but she made a lot of mistakes too. Made a lot of errant, just dumb passes, and took some bad shots. But you understand that you're gonna kind of get that with her because she's gonna make some of those what you I would say bad shots. I would say rushed shots, and you could have gotten a better look on some of those possessions rather than pulling up near half court a couple of times. But then again, if you make that, I mean, you're sucking the life out of that LSU, out of that LSU just lineup and just the bench too. I get it. Like you kind of got to take that with Caitlin Clark, but Caitlin Clark had a goat type of performance, 41 points, 12 assists, about 8 rebounds, something like that. But dominant night from Caitlin Clark and company. It just Kate Martin had a hell of a game too. 20 points, double digit rebounds, I believe. The glue, as she is called by uh, the Iowa coaching staff and her teammates. So a heck of a game by Kate Martin and the Glue, Kate Martin, aka the Glue. But it was an all around just a solid showing from Iowa in particular. And I'll spend a lot of this episode talking about that game, and we'll go ahead and do that. It was like I said, it was very competitive, back and forth early. Angel Reese looked really good on the floor. The Floje, gosh, I can't remember her last name. Floje Williams. Uh, Johnson. Floje Johnson had a heck of a game. Led LSU in scoring. Excuse me, 23 points. She also had 6 assists. She had a couple of key blocks as well. Angel Reese tweaked her ankle a little bit, and she left the game for a few minutes, but it didn't seem to hamper her. She was able to run the floor just fine from what I could tell. I'm sure she wasn't 100%, but it didn't make a difference in the game to me. Reese ended up with 17 points, 20 rebounds, had at least 3 blocks, 3 or 4 blocks, and had a heck of a game, but she did foul out. And really, she had about 8 fouls in that game, but the referees let them play, and I'll take that. I had no gripe with the officiating. There was one call on Caitlin Clark, her first foul, that was clearly not a foul. But even watching it live, I said, "Yeah, I think that's a foul." I mean, just a bang bang play. But you look at the replay, and I was like, "Yeah, it's clearly not a foul." But overall, I thought it was a very well officiated game, and I will take that, letting them play, over what we saw in the national championship game a year ago, where the officiating would have been the story, or lack thereof, quality officiating would have been the complete story of the national championship game last year had Angel Reese not bailed them out with the taunting of Caitlin Clark at the end of the game. And that became the story. And, predictably, uh, it became a race thing, uh, which is where we're at in 2023 then. Just stupid. But yeah, it became the story. Angel Reese taunting Caitlin Clark, and whether you supported it or you didn't, and it was that I hated it just for the fact that it overshadowed the atrocious officiating of that game, and it also took away from the stellar play of that LSU guard who had graduated. Gosh, I can't remember her name now, but she had an amazing performance. But Angel Reese's antics just completely dominated the headlines, and it was all anybody talked about for a while. I mean, for a hot minute. So a lot of people were looking forward to this matchup, myself included. I thought LSU would win the game. I thought LSU on paper was the better team. How could you not be favored if you're the defending national champion? You have the best player on that team returning, and on top of that, you go out and you get the top two, not one, but top two players out of the transfer portal in Haley Van Lith and Anissa Morrow. Morrow had a heck of a game, by the way. I believe she had 14 points, 14 rebounds. Had some really good rebounds too, to where she would just reach over an Iowa defender like that, or that was trying to block out, and she would just reach over and grab it, like not an over the back thing. I mean, was smart about it. Just reached up and grabbed the rebound. Iowa's a smaller team. They can't jump with LSU. So blocking out was key. But I mean, LSU, or excuse me, Iowa has players that will just do their job, and they do it well. Molly Davis, point guard slash guard, starter for Iowa, has been out since the regular season finale against Ohio State, where she hurt her knee, and it looked like she badly hurt her knee. Looked like she tore something, but she just sprained, I think, an MCL, some kind of CL got sprained. They were hoping she'd be back for she was known she was going to miss the Big Ten tournament. Coaches, players were hoping she'd be back in time for the NCAA tournament. That hasn't been the case. I don't know if she'll return at this point, but Sydney Affolter, I think I got her last name right the second time. One of my favorite players on the Iowa squad, just an absolute, just solid player that just knows her role, does her job, and does it as well as you can in that, as for someone in that position. Just a very solid player, makes very few mistakes, makes plays when her number is called. When I saw that she had been plugged into the starting lineup for Molly Davis, I said, I was not really. They're not missing a beat here. They're not really missing a beat. I mean, there are times they do miss Molly Davis, but plugging in Sydney Folter has been just. It's almost like they haven't skipped a beat, and in some ways, they even look a little bit better. Sydney Folter gives a little more size, a tougher defense, like tougher play on defense, and it's just a really nice looking starting five out there. As far as somebody, everybody everybody has a job to do and they do it well. Everybody does something a little bit different. And on top of on top of that, Hannah Stolke, I thought played as well as you could against Angel Reese. She got into some foul trouble early, but that's to be expected. Going against a player of Reese's caliber. Um, but did played well, and Addison O'Grady for Iowa, one of the backup role playing post players, stepped in. Played well in spots there. Overall, it was just a really good team effort from Iowa, though. Iowa just outplayed them. They had, I mean, just the fluidity on offense just looked a lot better. Shots seemed to come. I don't want to say come easier, but Iowa just kept getting better looks. Iowa kept getting better looks on the offensive end. LSU just looked sloppy at times. I mean, just and a little bit disorganized, and we're almost relying too much on just the talent on paper. You could see on Kim Mulkey's face, she was very frustrated at times. Haley Van Lith, one of the top two transfers that came into LSU, she was the top one. Heck of a player for Louisville last year. Kind of had a coming out party against Iowa in the Elite Eight a year ago, where she was kind of going bucket to bucket with Caitlin Clark. But that was not the case. I think she hit a couple of shots early, and her shot was just broke the rest of the game. And she was the one guarding Caitlin Clark, which I don't like that matchup. I mean, it's a 5'7", guard being Haley Van Lith going against a legitimate 6-foot Caitlin Clark who can score on anybody. So what did Caitlin Clark do? She just torched her. I mean, just torched her for 41. And Van Lith even turned and put her hands up. And there's already been memes alike with that image. She just kind of looked like, I mean, what do you want me to do? I mean, and there was nothing she could do. It wasn't necessarily that she played poorly on the defensive end. She stayed on her as best she could. There was just nothing she could do. She was outmatched. But on the offensive end, she didn't show up. And based on her field goal percentage this postseason and in recent games toward the end of the regular season, it looks like she's lost some confidence or has just not been able to find her groove. I would say that's probably more so the case, just hasn't been able to find her groove, because when you join a star-studded team like LSU, when you come in and you pull a Kevin Durant and go join the best team in the country, in the league, there's only one ball. There's still only one ball. Kevin Durant went into the Warriors team and became I mean, he was their best player. He was still their leading scorer. Haley Van Lith just kind of looked lost in the shuffle at times throughout the season. You almost forgot about her. There were times you almost forgot she was on the team, and you almost forgot, like you would have forgotten she was on the floor last night if she wasn't guarding Caitlin Clark and just getting torched on the offensive or on the defensive end. It just, yeah, and just her shots were way off, and just I don't know. I wonder if she could go back and do things differently if she would have just stayed at Louisville. It seemed like it feels like her stock dropped quite a bit after the season as far, and the WNBA, it's not like the NBA, they're not going to go and make millions in the WNBA. I mean, they play long enough, sure, you'll get there, but she'll get to do that. I mean, she's still a good enough player to be able to play at the next level. Um, it's just, and I don't know, she just didn't look like she belonged on the floor with that LSU team or even that Iowa team. She just didn't look like the same player. This postseason, really, this entire season, she just didn't look like the same player that she was at Louisville. And I wonder if she could do things differently if she would just stayed at Louisville, because it just didn't work out at LSU. Like you didn't even you couldn't really find your spot on that team. Like as far as getting into the offense, I mean, she'd have games here and there where she'd get buckets. I mean, it wasn't just a complete flop, but it was a disappointing season as far as what you'd expect from a player of her caliber coming in and joining a team like LSU. It was disappointing, to say the least. And didn't get a single ring. No regular season championship, no SEC tournament championship. South Carolina got both of those, and obviously not a national championship. So, you know, too late to look back now. But I mean, I guess you could always say, "What if?" Had she stayed in Louisville, she could have been thinking, like, "Gosh, what if I did go join that team?" I think naturally you'd say what we all said at the beginning of the season. Oh, they're clearly the best team in the country. And it just never looked that way. It just never gelled and never looked that way. Of course, LSU loses their opener by double digits to Colorado, who Iowa really dominated in the Sweet 16 to get to the Elite Eight. But just a disappointing showing from Haley Van Lith uh, last night and really throughout the postseason. And even toward the end of the regular season. But Iowa moving on. It wasn't, it was a very different look at the end of the game. It was kind of, everybody is kind of, you weren't really going into the game neutral, or at least a lot of people weren't. You kind of picked a side who you're rooting for. Uh, and LSU has been dubbed as the villains by some LA Times articles, and I'm not going to get into that. You can look all that up yourself. Of course, an article came out about Kim Mulkey, which I wouldn't. That was from the Washington Post. I wouldn't even known about the Washington Post article had Kim Mulkey not blown it up by talking about it so much. I tried to find it, and I did find it online, but I would have had to give my email in order to read it, and I was just like, I'm good on that. I'll look at the Cliff Notes version of it and just see what other people have to say about it. But from what I had heard about it, there was nothing in there that people didn't already really know about her. And I didn't, which was nothing like, criminal or, it was some stuff that'd be controversial, for 2024 as far as, uh, players being openly gay, things like that. And Kim Mulkey supposedly saying, like, to encouraging them to hide it, something along those lines. Again, you can look it up yourself if you want to get into that. I don't. Uh, she's a multinational champion coach at two different schools, and is clearly a leader amongst women. I've got a lot of respect for Kim Mulkey. I don't like everything she does, but the woman's a heck of a heck of a basketball coach, was a heck of a player in her day, I believe a national champion at Louisiana Tech, and even a Olympic gold medalist. So her resume speaks for itself. But uh, the end of the game was nothing like it was last year. Of course, Iowa was on the winning side of things, and um, yeah, and they shook hands like normal after the game, and of course, the camera really focuses on Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and they just have a quick exchange that appeared to be very pleasant. And the post game presser for LSU, Floje Johnson, she was asked about Angel Reese, and I don't even know if the question really had anything to do with her response. But she basically said, the gist of it was, you don't know, none of you know Angel Reese. I know Angel Reese, and just talked about how caring and wonderful of a person she was and all that. And I'm sure she does get that side of Angel Reese, and that's fine. And quite frankly, I had I had zero issue with that response because I even liked it because you go to bat for your teammate even if they're in the wrong. Really, I mean, you do that for your friends, you do that for your family. A lot of times, but you definitely do it for your teammates. You always have your teammates back, um, even if you don't necessarily always agree with what they say and do. You always back your teammate. Um, and the only thing I had issue with was Angel Reese's kind of response after that, where she talked about basically being a victim. And I will pull that up. I did save that quote. I just tried to stay strong. I've been attacked so many times. Death threat, death threats. I've been sexualized. I've been threatened. I'm still human. All this has happened since I won the national championship, and I haven't been happy since then. Well, I mean, your social media would say otherwise based on how the how you were after the national championship last year. But as far as being first of all, let's talk about being sexualized. Okay. Now, I don't think the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue people, I don't think they put a gun to her head and forced her to do that. I'm sure she got paid a very pretty penny to go pose for that. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure that she saw that as an opportunity to further her name, or continue to build her brand. She wasn't complaining about it then. And on top of that, you've got her Instagram post where she posts herself in similar type of images, bikini images. It's like, no, you did that yourself. That wasn't other people sexualizing you. But um and as far as being a victim goes and threats being made toward her, she said death threats even, which nobody's condoning that. And quite frankly, I don't know how many people had actually done that. I mean, it's obviously stupid, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to say don't take it seriously, but at the same time, it's like, come on, it's some idiot behind a keyboard saying something stupid. But the overall point being, there just appeared to be no accountability from her, Angel Reese. That is, if you're going to be the villain, and when your first response upon winning a national championship, if you're rather than go and celebrate with your teammates and just shake hands after the game and all that, when your first response is to go over to the opposing team's best player, who's also the biggest star in the game, in your game, and taunt her and show your ring finger to her face and follow her around and stalk her like a weirdo, if that's your first response, don't be surprised that not everybody's going to like that. Or don't be surprised that not everybody, yeah, is going to like that or cheer that on. Of course, Angel Reese has her fans, and she has the people that even celebrated that. Not only supported it, but celebrated it. But then there's the other side that did not. That just she really became villainized that day by those people. So anytime LSU didn't have success this season, it was largely celebrated by that other side. And so when you and yeah, it wasn't just that moment. And the LSU's elite or excuse me, second round game this tournament against Middle Tennessee. When Reese drew a foul on Middle Tennessee's post player, and that player fouled out as a result. Angel Reese on the ground is smiling and waving by. As the other team's player is in tears going off the floor, you're on the ground smiling and waving by. Yeah, that's going to rub some people the wrong way. When you are going through the handshake line and you tell a UCLA assistant to watch your mouth, that she needs to watch her mouth. And that's in the round of 16. Shocker, not everybody's going to like that. Big surprise, right? So my favorite part, which I didn't see this until after the game last night. It was real. It might have even been today when I saw it just on social media when Reese fouled out last night against Iowa. Of course, everybody ran over to help up. I think it was Kate Martin that drew the charge, which was a charge, by the way. Somebody had tweeted like the video of it and said, Reese got her fifth foul in this call. Agree or did she foul her? Or was it a charge? And I was like, yes. I just retweeted it with yes, because it was clearly a charge. And as as the Iowa players are running over to help Kate Martin up, Reese is walking away, clearly frustrated, and Gabby Marshall just looks at her and goes, "Bye." It was fantastic because it was just karma. It's like if you're gonna dish it out, you're gonna have to take it. If you're gonna dish it out, you're gonna have to take it. I would have had a lot more respect for Reese had she just owned it in the presser, but you can't just. Long story short, you cannot be the villain. You cannot play the villain for an entire year since winning the national championship, and then turn around and play the victim when things don't go your way. No, that's not how it works. You're not going to get sympathy from me or a lot of other people. You're going to get it from your fan base, but you're not going to get it from a lot of other people when you've shown essentially that you will dish it out. I mean, there's just multiple occurrences of that. Of just her dishing it out. Don't be surprised if people dish it back at you when you don't have the same success. Having said that, I mean, Angel Reese, a very fine player, had 17 points 17 points, 20 rebounds, had a good game. Just I was just better. I was just better. They're moving on, and LSU's going home. But we have a very interesting matchup. Gosh, I guess it would be Friday. It'd be Friday night. UConn and Iowa, Paige Beckers and company at UConn. They beat Juju Watkins and USC. Another excellent game. That was the Elite Eight matchup last night. I watched the second half of that game because I was watching Iowa and LSU on delay. I got off of work really late, so Mondays are the freaking worst, man. And ladies and everybody in between. But the point is, I didn't get home till late, so the Iowa LSU game was almost over by the time I got to actually sit down and click play. I had it recording, so I got to watch that entire game. And by the time I was done with it, I flipped over to UConn. I immediately flipped over to UConn and USC. and it was halftime. It was a tie game at halftime, so I was like, okay, good. I get to watch the second half. And UConn just made more plays down the stretch. I mean, Juju Watkins, a fantastic freshman, but Paige Beckers and company made more plays down the stretch, got the win. And, of course, South Carolina took care of business. It was interesting for about 3 quarters. I can't even remember who they played, but I kept an eye on it on Sunday, I believe it was, when they played. But they pulled away late and got the win, and NC State did as well. I expect South Carolina to take care of business, though, and we'll be in the national championship game. Iowa, UConn, that's the matchup I'm most intrigued by. And uh, I'm going to go Iowa in that just because I think UConn just, well, there's no think. I mean, UConn just lacks depth. I mean, they're banged up. Um, that's a banged up squad. You could tell just by Gino's reaction. He was just proud to get to the Final Four. He was just proud to make it out of that region. Um, I'm not saying UConn can't beat Iowa. I'm just saying I don't think it happens. I think Iowa is just, this is a team that's been playing together for a long time now. The four seniors on that squad are in the starting lineup. Although I don't know if Sydney Folter is a senior or not, but the three starters that have been there, starters for a long time now: Caitlin Clark, Gabby Marshall, Kate Martin. They're just they're all dialed in. Hannah Stolke's a solid post player, sophomore post player. Sydney Folter, I've already talked about her, how good she is, and you've got some good role players coming off the bench as well. I think Iowa's just the better team, and I think they're just hitting on all cylinders and on a different level right now. So I think I think Iowa gets the job done, and I think we'll see South Carolina, Iowa on Monday night. Now, I had said in previous episodes that, well, I think South Carolina is by far, I'd say by far, South Carolina is clearly the best team in the country. They just are on the women's side. It's it's like UConn on the men's side. It's South Carolina up here. In that second tier, you got LSU, Iowa, USC. Teams like that, just on that second tier. Pardon me. And off button. But I just think South Carolina is just that much better. Having said that, and this is what I said in previous episodes, if there is a team that can give South Carolina problems, I think it's Iowa. I think Iowa can give them some problems, and it has everything to do with how they play. They play a very fast-paced style, and South Carolina has some quick guards, but I don't necessarily know their shape level. I'm sure they're in shape, but I mean, can you run with these Iowa guards in the quarters 3 and 4? I don't know. A young player like Malaysia Fulwiley, a very explosive, very talented, very fun player to watch, by the way. Is her conditioning up to that level yet? Just being a freshman, I don't know. I know South Carolina's bigs uh, can't run the floor like Hannah Stolke can. I mean, Hannah Stolke, the sophomore, post player for Iowa, is, like um, she was an all conference track athlete in high school. So I mean, she can run the floor as well as any big in the country can. So I think what the way Iowa would have success against South Carolina would be transition offense, getting transition baskets, because we know how well of a passer Caitlin Clark is. She's as good of a passer as she is a scorer. She's just such a great shooter that we don't talk about her passing. And the night that Hannah Stolke got 47 or 48 points, whatever it was, that came basically as the result of, I think it was Michigan. It was Michigan, I believe it was. that game. I could be wrong. It was a Big Ten matchup, but their game plan was clearly to key in on Caitlin Clark, stopping her, making everyone else beat her. And anytime that double team would come, Clark would find Stolke, and that's just how the matchup worked out that night for easy buckets. I think that you would. I'm not saying that's what South Carolina would do, but I don't. In fact, I don't think they would do that at all. I just think that transition baskets would be where a player like Hannah Stolke's buckets would come. Hannah Stolke, Kate Martin, and company. Again, Kate Martin had a huge game. She'll have to have another huge game if they do get past UConn and end up facing South Carolina in the national championship, or heck, even NC State. But I think South Carolina takes care of business Friday night. And I think Iowa's game plan against South Carolina would be very close to what they did last year. Just leave Raven. Gosh, I can't remember her last name either. The clear guard for South Carolina that they left open that just said, "All right, we're going to give her the shot. We're just going to live with her shooting it," and she missed the majority of her shots. Now she is upped her percentage to like 30, 32% this year, but still, that's enough for that's not enough for me to switch up my game plan. Maybe a little bit, but she's gonna have to prove to me that you're gonna make that shot for me to switch up my game plan and something that clearly worked a year ago. So if they play each other, I think Iowa can give them some problems. Like seriously, Raven Johnson. By the way, I was right, Raven Johnson. So um, I would still let's just say that matchup happens for the sake of it, because like I said, we will not. I won't be back on the air. Me and Brad won't be back until the national championship games are over. So let's just assume, for heck's sake, that it's South Carolina and Iowa. I will pick South Carolina in that one, but I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if Iowa won it, just because, like I said, I think that team can give them some problems. Just the style of play, and of course, when you have the best player in the game and Caitlin Clark on the floor, anything can happen, especially in one game. So, those are my picks for the national championship. I already touched up on the men's side. Again, I got UConn winning the men's side. I got South Carolina winning the women's side. Um, so yeah, and we'll kind of wrap up the show. The UFL kicked off over the weekend. I didn't watch any of it, but we do have spring football underway. So I saw that AJ McCarron is re-signed or he signed again with the St. Louis Battlehawks, one of the 4 teams that made it from the XFL, XFL and joining the UFL. And in other news, my Arkansas Razorbacks took care of business against LSU. I didn't see if I saw that they won the series. I don't know if they swept them or not, but either way, LSU has been knocked out of the top 10, I believe, entirely. And Arkansas sits atop at number 1. They came into tonight 23-3 overall, clear cut number 1 in every poll. They did play Arkansas State tonight, which they throttled them, I believe. The last I checked, they were up 13-0. So they just absolutely throttled the Red Wolves. But I mean, kudos to Arkansas State for playing them. The Razorback baseball team plays again against Ole Miss at 7 p.m. Thursday, and that's on the SEC Network. I'll do my best to catch some of that game. I got a lot going on this week, but I would like to see that game. And big shout out to the Razorback softball team. They won 2 of 3 games, winning the series over number 3 Georgia in Athens over the weekend. So woo pig on that. And on that note, I'm going to get out of here. So had a pretty decent show for going solo. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But yeah, I'll get out of here, and Brad and I will be back next week, and we will recap the men's and women's national championship games and then some, and whatever else is going on in the sports world, because there's always something. But until then, I'm going to get out of here. I'm your host, Graham Powell, and I'll see you next time. See you next time. Deuces, y'all.